Awesome. So hello, good afternoon, everybody. I want to start with a question. So if you hear the phrase coming out of the closet, what do you think of? For some people, they think of something personal. For others, they think of a friend or a family member. And for others still, they think of what they've seen in TV or on movies. So normally it's a lot of crying, a lot of hugging, maybe a motivational rock ballad in the background. But in reality, coming out of the closet is a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But one thing it always is this. It's always a method of expressing identity. And so speaking of, I'd like to express my identity to you now. Hi, my name's Matt. I'm a designer. I identify as a gay or queer man, and I use he, him, his pronouns. And I'd like to kick things off with a story. So I'm originally from the lovely small state of Delaware. And for those of you who are familiar, there is not much to do there. And so I started working as soon as I was legally able to. And my very first job was at a Little League baseball park in the concession stand, which was ideal because I hate baseball and don't know how to talk to children. But I stayed there for most of my teen years. And towards the end of my time there, I was having a conversation with my boss and a couple of my coworkers at the time, and we were just joking around after a shift, and my boss started using a homophobic slur to refer to another one of my coworkers. And as one does when you're a teenager, you laugh it off, kind of brush it away, it's not that important, but it impacted me in ways that I didn't fully understand until I grew up a little bit. It kind of showed me right off the bat, years before I even started coming out, that being gay in the workplace is a risk, and probably not one that I wanted to take. And so the big issue with this is there's not always a cut and dry experience. You can't always say, oh, this one boss is problematic and that's why I act this way. For a lot of people, the fear of what if can keep them in the work closet all on its own. What if my boss is homophobic? What if my coworkers won't accept me? What if my base identity causes problems for me in my career? And Supreme Court's case pending, but this is a valid concern. In 30 separate states around the country, LGBTQ+ workers aren't fully protected from discrimination. This can mean a lot of different things. First and foremost, you can simply be fired for your identity, lose your source of income, lose your career path, and that's kind of it. You can also be passed over for promotions or projects. This is a little bit more insidious because it's hard to see that it's happening when it is. And even if you do pinpoint it, it's hard to prove that it's happening because of your identity. And you can also be subjected to uncomfortable or unsafe working conditions. And this is really taxing over time. And so for a ton of different reasons, across jobs, across ages, across places, people choose to work in the work closet. They don't come out at work, even if they're out in the rest of their lives. But the risk isn't just saddled on the shoulders of the employees. There's also a business risk to this, and it comes down to four main factors. The first is productivity. So say that 10% of your daily energy or productivity would go towards concealment. For me, when I wasn't out at work, it turned into things like changing the way that I walked and talked and dressed so I didn't seem very gay, or changing the pronouns of my partner when I was talking about who I was dating at the time. But it was just 10%, I still had 90 days of full energy, or 90% of full energy for the rest of the day. So it was fine. Except it's not. So when you add all of that time together, it adds up to 6 weeks of lost productivity every single year. It may not seem like a ton of time, but imagine if your boss came up to you and said you get 6 weeks of paid vacation. It's a meaningful amount of time. The next is communication. So naturally, if you're trying to hide something or conceal it, the less you talk to people, the less likely you are to slip up. So you're just going to be a little bit more introverted at work. And you're also more actively avoiding people. If you know somebody will have an issue with you, you're just not going to talk to them. And if that person is your boss or somebody you work closely with at work, that causes a lot of problems. The next is creativity. So we work in a very creative field. A lot of the times we tend to forget this, but stress and anxiety don't work well with creativity. And hiding your identity actively contributes to your stress and anxiety. Creativity also requires vulnerability. You have to be able to bring your ideas to the table and show, this is who I am, this is what I'm thinking. And if you can't do the this is who I am part, your best ideas are going to stay in your head. And the last one is collaboration. So collaboration is based off of creativity and communication. So it stands to reason that if those two are suffering, collaboration is too. And in our field, if you're not collaborating, your work isn't going to get done well, if at all. So I work for a company called WillowTree in Durham, and a large portion of what we do is app development. I'm a designer. I don't code. Coding is scary. I can't do it. And so if I can't collaborate with the developer, our apps just don't get built, and we don't make money, and then we won't have a company. And so naturally, none of this stuff is great. Nobody wants their company to go through things like this, but Why focus on such a small group of people? The queer population in the United States is a very small subset, and people are naturally unhappy in some level at their company, so why focus on such a small group of people? I want to take you back to this definition. While the phrase coming out of the closet is geared specifically towards the queer community, the idea that your identity can affect how you move about the workspace is not specifically queer at all. Let's look at some numbers. So, 4.5% of the American labor force identify as queer, 6% are practicing non-Christian, non-majority faiths, 19% have a disability of some sort, 22% are people of color, and 47% are female. Now, either historically, all the way up to this day, members of these groups and many more have had to conceal part of their identity to have their voices heard, to get on projects, or even to be hired in the first place. And it may not seem like much. None of these groups are the majority group. But when you add them together, they make up almost half, if not more, of most workplace demographics. So it's not just about one group, it's about everyone. And so what can you do? One of the tricky things about D&I initiatives is they're normally scooped up by HR or management, and maybe somebody will send out an email in a couple of weeks, or a poster will be put up in a boardroom, but that's kind of it. My goal is, what can you do? The next time you're in office, the next time you're behind your desk, what are some actions that you can personally take to make your office more inclusive? The first is introduce yourself using your pronouns. Now, if you notice at the top of this, I let everybody know that I use he, him, his pronouns. Now, it's not because anybody has ever been confused about what pronouns I may or may not use. Nobody has ever guessed incorrectly. But by saying the pronouns that I use, I'm letting you know how I want you to speak to me, and also saying I care about how you want to be spoken to. It creates an open dialogue in a space that doesn't always have dialogues made. The second is looking into starting ERGs. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with what an ERG is, it's groups of employees collected around ideas or identities or shared experiences. They meet formally or informally in the office, and they work together to build community and make people feel welcome where they may not otherwise feel that way. In the best case scenario, they can also enact change in workplaces that need it. The next, it's crazy that I have to say this. I was talking to a friend who told me that I had to put this slide in, but don't touch anybody's hair, ever. The friend that I was talking to has very long, tightly coiled hair, and she's told me in a professional environment, the number of people that come up to her and ask or just touch her hair is ridiculous. We're all adults. We should be able to keep our hands to ourselves. And this feeds to a larger point of don't point out differences in people that don't matter. That has no impact on the work that you do. It's completely unrelated and pretty problematic. So please keep your hands to yourself. Number 4, accommodate variations in holidays and scheduling around religious practices. So, the work schedule in America is built around Christian scheduling, for example, having Sundays and Christmas off. Not everybody practices and celebrates that way. So if you have workers that need to leave in the middle of the day to go pray, let them do it. This also falls in line with things like medical care and childcare. Let people do what they need to do, and I promise they will come back ready and willing to work harder every single time. The next one, I absolutely love giving this one because it makes a lot of people in the room uncomfortable, which is why I do it. Make menstrual products readily available. Offices all the time have a ton of sanitary products for free everywhere, from napkins to paper towels to tissues, soap, hand sanitizer, all over their office. Menstrual products shouldn't be any different. And if you think they should be, you're probably not the one using them. And the last one is have hard conversations. None of this stuff is easy to talk about, especially if you're coming at it from the point of a larger majority group. It's not easy to talk about things like oppression and prejudice and privilege, but you have to do it. In this case, inaction actively hurts people. So get to the table, make sure you have lots of groups represented, and just talk about things. You'll be amazed at what you can do. And so after all of this, if you realize you may be in the closet a little bit at work, open the door. It'll be scary, it'll be hard, but I promise it'll be worth it in the end. And after this, if you feel like you don't have a closet to come out of, just please, please, please make sure you're not blocking anybody else's exit. Thank you.